Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Max Verstappen is the 2022 world champion, but Lewis Hamilton has set his sights on getting back to the top next season, saying that next year's Mercedes will certainly be, at least in his opinion, way better than this year's car was, and is going to prove a key difference maker in next year's championship fight, and maybe part of the reasoning why they were using such a massive rear wing this weekend. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thanks very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to discuss. Firstly, this real quick as we discuss Mercedes here. This coming up before the race. We were kind of surprised to some degree that Mercedes were running such a massive rear wing on their car. It helped them a fair bit today in the wet conditions. I wonder how quick Hamilton would have been in clean air and Russell as well, because Ocon was only about, I mean, look, Verstappen was in a league of his own, and then Perez and Leclerc were lapping about 1 second off Verstappen's pace, and then Ocon was lapping 1.5 seconds off Verstappen's pace, and Hamilton was about 1.4 seconds off. So I do wonder if Hamilton would have been in clean air, how quick he would have been able to go, because he obviously had a lot of grip in the corners, but the straight line deficit was a big issue for him and, well, obviously Russell as well, even though he made some good moves on some weaker cars and arguably drivers further down in the field. But apparently the reasoning for this was the engineers are focused on 2023 fully in next year's car, and apparently they want to clarify the last questions about their car, and the large wing provides more reliable data for comparison purposes. So apparently one of the reasons why they were using this wing was effectively a data collection exercise. Maybe Hamilton with a smaller wing finishes P4, but the reality is he doesn't care about that. He's more interested in the team maximising their knowledge and performance for next year's car, which is what he's going to discuss here. Hamilton found himself in positions like this a number of times, coming up on Esteban Ocon, going into 130R, had the grip most certainly, didn't quite have the straight line speed to make a move into turn 1 or into the final couple of corners of the racetrack. Ocon, of course, did some masterful defending over the course of the race as well. Just to talk about this as well, because one of the key things that the Mercedes has done rather well this season is tyre degradation and reducing tyre wear. Look at the difference here between Verstappen's tyre on the right and Leclerc's tyre here on the left. It's a night and day difference. This is practically a slick here in the middle. Verstappen's tyre looks almost as good as new after 25 laps-ish of running on this particular compound. Leclerc's tyre is struggling massively, so really interesting to see the difference here between what the Ferrari does in these conditions and what the Red Bull does, and just why, okay, yeah, Verstappen might not quite have been 1 second a lap quicker in terms of pure driver performance, but the car was enabling him to do that because it just handled its tyres really well, which is one of the only positive things the Mercedes does. The Red Bull just kind of does everything right this season. Whether they can create a car that does that again next year, who knows, but you wouldn't exactly bet against it right now, and certainly every other team is playing catch-up. Now, obviously, all that drama went down earlier today, the Gasly thing, the tractor, Verstappen becoming the world champion, right, the wet tyre shenanigans, but the budget cap is coming up tomorrow, we believe. They're going to announce which teams are over, if any are at all. Bonotto's given his thoughts on it, saying that like, he really wants them to clamp down if there are teams at fault. We believe that probably not that much will come of this, but certainly there's going to be a lot of talking that comes as a result of this. If indeed Red Bull are shown to be somewhat over the budget, we shall see tomorrow. We believe we'll see tomorrow, unless they delay it yet again. But Bonotto has doubled down and said, look, the penalty must be significant. I need absolute transparency on the discussions that took place, and effectively confirming, at least from his perspective, that because they're taking so long, it confirms there are conversations going on, which proves some teams are at fault. Kind of a, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Red Bull is probably what he's getting at right here, and understandably, because obviously they've had a difficult time. Fair play to Latifi. Just wanted to shout out Nicholas Latifi real quick, because probably the last points he will score in Formula 1, but P20 to P9 in a Williams today in tough conditions. That is very impressive stuff from Nicholas Latifi. You've got to give credit to it. I think it was P8 or even higher at a time, but yeah, his first points of 2022. So congratulations to Latifi. We'll see if he'll go out with an absolute bang at Abu Dhabi and smashing into the wall yet again, and maybe cause another crucial safety car, who knows. But of course, by that point, the championship would already have been decided. This then from Mercedes and Hamilton on the race today. He kind of said, like, look, he had a great time in the race, and this is why Hamilton, we know he's going to stay around for quite a long time to come. He really enjoyed the race, as he says. Once we got racing today, I had an absolute blast out there. It was so tough in the conditions, hard to see. That's exactly how motor racing should be, a real challenge for us all. So it's interesting how Hamilton's kind of sentiment has changed, because I'm sure last year, if he was stuck behind like an Alpine, it'd have been absolutely fuming. But now he kind of recognises the car isn't quite what it could be, and just having close racing with drivers is what he's enjoying again, and probably one of the reasons why he's going to stay around longer than maybe some of us would have predicted 12, you know, let's say 10 months ago, or something along those lines, when he was kind of having that hiatus during the middle of the off-season. Hamilton, of course, has congratulated Max Verstappen, says, yeah, Max drove phenomenally well. The team did a great job producing the car, of course, which was Lewis. Obviously, he's always going to be the difference maker in championships in general. How good is the car? Unless they're very closely matched, in which case you get, well, a better championship fight. And I was hoping we would get that this season. It did look set to be a really good championship fight between Max and Charles. In the end, for various reasons, it was an absolute one-way show towards the end. And Red Bull have now equalled the records of consecutive top 2 finishes at any race ever, with 17 races in a row since Bahrain where they've achieved that. And they can, of course, well, extend that record and break that record next time out in Austin. But of course, this time next year, Hamilton is definitely looking to be in a different boat. As he says here, I don't feel frustrated because it was a sprint race. He feels like with a longer race, maybe with a pit stop, right? Like, if there had have been room for a pit stop and Hamilton maybe, came in early, did the undercut or something, then he could have had an interesting race. As I say, I wonder how quick the Mercedes would have been, as they were quick on Friday in wet conditions, how quick they would have been if he'd have been able to clear Ocon and then, see if he could compete with Perez and Leclerc and stuff like that. But of course, by that point, they were way up the road. Even if he were to have got the move done, I did the best I could today, and I'm happy we at least got some points. We were just so slow on the straight, he says. You could probably see on the TV, as soon as I pulled out, they would pull away. And yeah, I wish it was a longer race. I'm glad that we got some laps in for the fans, although it's not really a massive race for them considering how long they've waited for it here in Japan. And going on to say this, congrats to Max. I think for us, we know that we have problems with this car. I believe that we as a team, we have not gone from being world champions to not being able to build a good car. I have no doubts we'll have a better car next year. Whether or not we've rectified every issue we have this year, we'll find out when we get there, right? So this is the thing that a lot of people said as well about even Hamilton individually and also the team. That like at the start of the season, people were saying, oh, Hamilton's washed, he's done for and all this type of stuff. I think he proved in the middle of the season he's still got what it takes. But it's the same thing, really. It's not like Hamilton's forgotten how to drive in the last 10 months. And it's not like Mercedes have forgotten how to build a car in the last 10 months. Just didn't really get it right from a number of perspectives this year. Next year should be better. They've got, you'd think, all the data in the world to build a better car. They've obviously got an idea of what they want to do. We've heard these rumblings about their philosophy and the fact that they're probably going to keep the no side pods, but it's a floor change or whatever key mistake it is that they made that is making their car slow, especially on high, power circuits where they need the straight line speeds. That has been their real key issue this year, which has held them back in many different circumstances. They fix that, they're in a much better position. Whether they can fix everything, who knows, we'll see over time. But of course, Red Bull are going to be the front runners again for next season with the car to beat, you would well imagine. If they can upgrade this year's car into next year, it's going to be a scary beast and it's going to be tough to stop with Max Verstappen as it stands at the helm. This just to say also on Sebastian Vettel, a P6 finish. Incredible stuff from Vettel, honestly, the entire weekend. Stroll had a great start as well and had a good race for himself also. But again, the Aston Martin has honestly made some good progress the last few races. I'm sure that, when Alonso lost P6 to Vettel and he ended up P7, he's probably looking at the Aston thinking, you know what, I won't mind being in that car next year because the Alpine is quick, but sometimes it doesn't finish races. In fact, that happens rather a lot to Alonso so far this season. But Vettel's P6 finish now means Aston Martin is very close indeed to Alfa Romeo in the standings, and you would almost think for sure they're going to overhaul that because Alfa have not been quick lately by any means. So yeah, Aston Martin making a late charge for P6 in the constructors, and they may well get there. And just to mention some interesting deja vu here to close out the video, I do wonder what this means for the future. But yes, in 2004, a driver won his 7th world title in Michael Schumacher at the 14th race of the season, and then 2 years later, a 25-year-old becomes a 2-time world champion in Fernando Alonso at the 18th race of the season. And then guess what's happened in 2020 and then in 2022 with Hamilton and Verstappen respectively. What does this mean for the future, you can imagine? Is Verstappen going to go down the Alonso route of not necessarily having the cars, changing teams? That seems doubtful, right? That Verstappen Red Bull combo is a deadly one that will continue for a very long time to come. And of course, we now, are we now in the Verstappen era per se? 2 championships in a row, like the dominant driver on the track right now in the dominant car. Like, how long does Verstappen's dominance last here? Does it last into next season? Does he go 4 in a row like Vettel? Does he go one further? What does the future hold there for Verstappen? Of course, a lot of it does come down to the car, and I'm sure Mercedes and Ferrari, even though they've got their issues outside of just the car, will be doing their best next season to rectify those issues. But, Red Bull certainly have the head start in these new regulations. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, take care, and I'll see you next time.